be the last time, so what the hell?
Welcome to Survive in Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your co-host for Survive in Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host and our special guest. And our co-host is special, too. 1981 national champion, probably the largest ego I know of a man who sat on the bench most of his life, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Having a great day, Mike. Well, what can I say? I'm talking to you. We had a great guest on today. I mean, life is good. Well, what do I have to worry about? I mean, I'm not like Les Moonves, who just lost $125 million in severance pay. So, you know, geez, that would sour my day.
Yeah, that would suck. And today, of course, we do college basketball on Tuesdays, and we've got Brian Rauf from Fansided, the Busting Brackets site. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
All right, we got to get something out of the way now because there's an AP Top 25, and then the Grueling Truth puts out a Grueling Truth puts out a Top 25, and Steve has an issue with my Top 25.
Well, no, start your show, Mike. I mean,
I did start the show. Well, I'm giving you an open floor here
Mike,
to make a
the whole
fool out of me.
concept here. You ever watch Dallas? You kind of put the cliffhanger at the end of the show, so people kind of
well,
want to come back.
We're going right to it
cliffhanger,
because you pissed me off.
Kind of like
you've already pissed me off. You just start talking. Go ahead.
No, I'm not saying a word. It's your show. Go, run it.
I am. You had a problem with my top 25. What is that problem?
The problem is that Kansas is over. Okay, your top 25. Kansas is probably the most overrated team in college basketball.
Really?
And they're definitely a top 10 team. Don't get me wrong there. But to put them at number one just because the world does, I thought you were smarter than that.
Really?
And then for some reason, for somebody that sits here in football, our football show we do, who just rips the SEC left, and right, and now you've got Tennessee number two over Duke. Seriously? Really? Seriously? You think Tennessee can beat Duke 9 out of 10 times?
9 out of 10 times? So having a team ranked second and another team ranked third means they'd win 9 out of 10 times. Who's the dumbass?
Okay.
All right. Kansas.
And then you jump on the bandwagon. I pull up the AP Top 25, and the first headline says, North Carolina surges. So what do? You surged North Carolina.
Yeah,
you think North Carolina's better than Indiana?
It had nothing to do with them beating Gonzaga. Well, let's include Brian here. The top 25 probably should be based off of what you've done, not what Steve Risley thinks you can do. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I get both sides of the argument for Kansas as number one. In terms of for Kansas, they started there for a reason, right? They're extremely talented, can beat you in a number of different ways. That's a little bit limited now with Asbuke being injured, but they've still proven that they can beat anybody, and it's not always pretty, but they're undefeated and have played some pretty good competition, including that Tennessee team. On the flip side of that, they haven't always won pretty. It's looked downright ugly at times. They've played some much lesser competition and really struggled with them. So they haven't – I don't think they're necessarily the number one team in the country. They haven't looked like the best team. But they don't have a resume that proves that they're not the number one team.
There, Steve. And Kansas has beaten Michigan State, which is arguably the best team in the Big Ten, which we say is the best conference. They beat Marquette. They beat Tennessee. What else do you want, Steve? I mean, they didn't lose. They beat Villanova. And no matter what anybody says, Villanova is tough for anybody to play at any time as long as Jay Wright's the coach there.
Okay,
now,
whatever.
To your Tennessee, I mean, they got Admiral Schofield, who has, like, the coolest name in college basketball. He's also one of the best players in college basketball.
Oh, that makes him number 3. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, because you're not going to let me finish what
I'm
saying. But, you know, nobody ever interrupts you because you're Jesus. You won an NCAA championship ring. I'm so impressed. This is the thing. O.J. Simpson was also at one point the greatest running back of all time, and he's still a freaking murderer. But Tennessee just beat Gonzaga 76-73. So you asked me how I could rank Tennessee above Duke. Well, I think Gonzaga lost to Duke. No, wait, they didn't, did they? They beat Duke. They also had a 6-point loss to Kansas. So they beat Louisville, who you said is a really good team, and they beat Louisville by double digits. They went to Memphis. I don't think Memphis is a great team, but it's a good road win. And in the end, a top 25 doesn't mean shit, no matter whether I do it or the AP does it.
Thank you. That's where I was going next. But you.
But don't you think that
now.
maybe Tennessee beating Gonzaga is more impressive than Duke losing to them?
No, I don't think. No,
you
not
don't?
necessarily. I mean,
So
I look at the body of talent that's on a team, and I think that there's nobody stronger than Duke. It's the best. It's the best college basketball team money can buy.
Okay, so you believe that the most important thing to being the best team is having the best individual talent?
Well, that's kind of a factor.
It is? Because wait a
And they
second.
got a pretty damn good
Wait a
coach,
second.
too.
Because I've had somebody preach to me for a couple years that it doesn't matter how much talent you got, it's how well those guys play together.
Right. Yeah. And did Brian just hang up on us? God, we're really doing a good job of being hosts here. We're not even
No,
working.
actually, I think Brian is so embarrassed for you in the way you're stammering and stuttering on your responses now that he's just waiting to see what next thing you're going to say.
I'm enjoying the back and forth.
There you go.
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now, Mike, and I know this with all my heart, and I'm going to just say it. Duke will be in the Final Four. Tennessee will not. Kansas will not. All right. Michigan will. Virginia.
Michigan will.
I hate those guys.
Virginia
I think
will?
Michigan will. I think Michigan's a great basketball team.
So you're going to go ahead and pick a Final Four now? Michigan?
Where do you have them ranked? Where do you have Michigan ranked?
I don't know. I had them like 4th, didn't I?
Well, I'm going to look at it right now. Hang on. Go ahead. Keep talking.
One thing I will say
keep yapping.
One thing I will say about Tennessee.
Yeah, Michigan ranked number 4.
Can you let Brian talk? Go ahead, Brian.
There you go. Well, no. The one thing I'll say about Tennessee is the resume is really, really good. But that win over Gonzaga certainly proved a lot for them, but it also felt a little bit fluky to me in the sense that Admiral Schofield isn't going to drop 30 and hit 6 threes every game. Now, obviously, he showed that he can do that, and that's why they beat Gonzaga, but I wouldn't bank on Tennessee replicating that performance multiple times like they would need to in an NCAA tournament format.
I think they could against Gonzaga because I think we found out that Gonzaga has one huge glaring problem, and that's their point guard Josh Perkins and his propensity to turn the ball over.
Oh, yeah. Whenever they face pressure, and it's really gone back to Perkins' entire career. We saw it when they lost to UNC in Chapel Hill. Every time they get pressured, they turn the ball over a ton, and their offense is just out of whack. They rely on their efficiency and execution offensively, and that's how they beat you. They have some really good players, but what makes Gonzaga is Mark Dewey's system and the way they execute that system. When they're pressured, Perkins and the rest of the guys really don't execute at a high level because they're pressured and end up playing more one-on-one and kind of get more loose with the ball, and we've seen that sink them a couple times. It's what sunk them last year in the NCAA tournament against Florida State. Gonzaga was a better team than Florida State, but they couldn't handle Florida State's length and Florida State's pressure. So Tennessee is a long, athletic, defensive team. UNC, the same kind of way, and when they really amped up the pressure in that first half, that was when we saw the game flip, and they just ran with it the rest of the way.
All right, so Steve, I have a question for you. Where do you think Michigan should be ranked, since you think I have them too low at number 4?
Ahead of Tennessee, but just
really
anywhere
ahead of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Why?
I think they play better day in and day out competition. I think it's a better brand of basketball. I think they have a better coach. Yeah.
All right, so let's look at this.
I think Beeline is solid.
They beat Villanova, and they beat North Carolina. Now, where's their better competition outside of Villanova and North Carolina? And I think Tennessee.
The Big Ten. The Big Ten. The Big
They're
Ten.
not. Wait a second. They're 2-0 in the Big Ten. They've played 2 freaking games. They haven't even played the Big Ten schedule yet. They beat Northwestern by 2 points at Northwestern. And they beat a bad Purdue team by 19. And yeah, for all you Purdue fans, I said it, a bad Purdue team, because Purdue is going to look like Indiana at the end of next year.
That's unbelievable, yeah. I think Painter's in trouble this year.
But really, wait a second, though. You're not getting out of this that easy. You said they've played better competition than Tennessee. You got Norfolk State, Holy Cross, George Washington, Providence, Chattanooga, Purdue, Northwestern, South Carolina, Western Michigan. Western Michigan they barely beat. South Carolina they only beat by like 10 points. I watched that game. They weren't that impressive to me. And I could have seen higher than 4th until I saw them play the last couple games, Steve.
Okay.
I think what works.
I think come Final Four time, Michigan will be there and Tennessee will be in Dollywood, whatever it is, Dollywood, whatever that thing is down in Gatlinburg.
All right, go ahead, Brian.
Vacationing.
I think what works in Michigan's favor is the way that they beat Villanova and the way they beat UNC. They were utterly dominant in those games, and Tennessee has been really good, but they've never looked dominant. And Michigan has shown us in the past that that's the kind of style that translates over to NCAA tournament play, and they have a couple guys who are capable of taking over games. Tennessee certainly has those guys as well, but I don't think Tennessee has put forth. They've gotten, I would say, probably equal quality wins, but Tennessee hasn't shown the dominance to run somebody off the floor of that caliber the way Michigan has.
All right, Steve, do you have any questions for Brian?
Do I have questions for Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got about 50 questions, but let's go on and do the show first.
Oh, okay. You got any basketball questions?
1 or 2.
Okay. You want to ask one?
Let's hear them.
Is Kansas overrated? Okay, here's number 1. I'm going down my list. Duke, best team. Okay, do we think Duke's the best team money can buy? Yes or no, Brian?
No, I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that.
Is Duke the best team money can buy? Yes or no?
Best team money can buy is probably the Warriors.
What?
Best team money can buy is probably Golden State.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're taking the high road. I hate that. Is Kansas overrated? Is Kansas overrated?
No.
Yes or no?
No, I don't.
I'm asking questions. Is Kansas overrated? Yes or no?
Yes. I think they're not
deserving.
Good. I think they're. I don't know how to put this because I can understand them being number 1, but I personally have them probably 3rd or 4th in the country. Just because of the way.
All right. Is Michigan or Michigan State the best team in the Big Ten?
I would probably say Michigan.
I don't think either one are.
Who do you think is?
All right. Well, you certainly. Who do you think it is? Indiana. You got them ranked 19th. That's really putting a lot of faith in them.
I believe it's Indiana. Wait a second. What makes you think that it matters what anybody's ranked right now? I'm telling you this.
Well,
the Indiana
Hoosiers. Makes you think you got to put a ranking system?
Hold on, because I'm telling you this.
What makes you think?
You know what makes me think that is because you want to get paid, right? And we need people on our website, so I wrote a top 25. You got a problem with that?
But you're an arena football coach. Okay?
Yeah. And you are a retired guy that used to work for Pfizer. What's your point?
I'm not. I don't put out a top 25 ranking.
I know, because you cannot write well enough that we could get an editor that could do it in a day.
Okay. All right.
Hey, you're the one that started off as soon as I got on the phone with you today, so you're just going to have to take it.
I know.
All right.
I know.
And really, I believe this.
I'm not done. No, wait. I'm still asking questions. Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
Brian, talk to us about Buffalo. Is this team for real? Are they really good? Or what's the deal with Buffalo?
We'll find out tonight when they play Syracuse. I mean, what really put them on the map was that win at West Virginia. Obviously, that upset over Arizona kind of had some significance. They returned most people back from that team. Then they won at West Virginia. So everyone was like, well, this team is really legit. We should take them seriously. West Virginia clearly now is not the team that we thought they were going to be. So I don't think that win holds as much weight now as it did then. And so I think, Buffalo is clearly a better team than West Virginia, and winning in Morgantown is a tough task. But in terms of them being ranked 14th in the country based off that win, that I'm not so sure about, and that's kind of what we'll find out tonight when they play Syracuse and then later on this week against Marquette.
Okay. Here's another question for you, Mike. Can I keep asking my questions? Because you asked me to ask all the questions I had of Brian, right?
I didn't say I said ask him a question, but go ahead.
Okay, Brian, all the big-time college coaches in college basketball right now, who is the one who's most in jeopardy after losing to Belmont?
That would probably be a certain coach at UCLA, I would guess. I tweeted after that game, and I think we're on Steve Alford watch. I'm not sure.
Is he in trouble?
Oh yeah,
he's on the ventilator.
The way things are going, if they keep going south, especially with how bad the Pac-12 is, with Arizona State losing to Vanderbilt last night too. That was the Pac-12's really only reliable team, and then they proved that they weren't reliable. If they struggle and finish middle of the pack in the Pac-12, I don't know if he makes it to the end of the season, honestly. And I know that'd be a kind of a rarity in college basketball, but
that would be a rarity.
I think they want to get a week or two head start on coaching search because it's becoming very obvious that he's not going to be there past this year.
Yeah, and you talked about
the
real quick, the Pac-12. It wasn't just that. You had USC got beat double digits by Oklahoma. Arizona gets beat by Baylor. Washington gets beat up by Virginia Tech. Cal only beats Cal Poly by 1. Arizona State gets blown out by Vanderbilt. I mean, the Pac-12, is not as good as the MAC this year.
What's
interesting? Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry. I like talking over Mike. I don't like talking over you because I think you're intelligent. I love talking over Mike.
That was all I was saying. It's a mess. There's no team you can look at in the Pac-12 and say, I think they're a good team who can win a couple games in March.
Well, plus Utah got blown out by Kentucky also.
Yeah, they're a conference that got 3 teams in the tournament last year. 2 of them lost in the first 4, and Arizona obviously lost to Buffalo. I think they'll be lucky to replicate that kind of success in getting 3 teams in this year.
Steve?
Okay, what's interesting is that I live in L.A., and right now I'm looking at the news right now, and they're showing this beautiful surf on Malibu Beach with people on surfboards and dogs on our morning news. It's only 9 o'clock here, or 9:20, so you guys are missing the boat, trust me. But we had this old saying with Coach Knight, and this is what we always thought about Coach Knight, was the day he stopped talking about you was the day, or yelling at you, was the day you better be worried. As long as he was yelling at you, that means he gave a damn about you. They're not saying a word about Steve Alford out here. I haven't heard. Mike had to tell me that Belmont beat him because I don't generally watch UCLA games to any great degree, but I didn't even know that they had lost to Belmont. And the news out here, I go around and I'm like, hey, I'm kind of a teammate of Steve Alford. We played at Indiana together, and they're like, who?
All right. So what we learned from this last 5 minutes, to me, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, is this: Steve Risley likes to throw around Steve Alford's name to try to get free shit. Number 2,
I do. Yeah, hell yeah.
Number 2, Steve Alford played at Indiana, and Brian, he's got a national championship ring, right?
He does.
And I think it's safe to say, even though he played at Indiana and he won a national championship ring, that he still doesn't know a whole lot about college basketball. Do you agree?
I don't think
Just say yes, Brian. All right? There's a method to this.
He does not know enough about X's and O's.
All right. So that brings us back to Steve. Steve,
wait, are you talking about Alford? Are you talking about Alford or me?
I was just talking about Alford. If you think that it was directed at you, then that's your problem.
Steve, I
obviously said Steve Alford.
Yes, I would. We would never insult you like that.
I think I'm going to put out a change.org petition to have Steve Risley become the new head coach at UCLA.
That'll never happen.
I'll sign it.
There you go.
I couldn't even get hired. I couldn't even get hired at CSUN as an assistant coach.
Well, let's put it this way: could you lose to Belmont?
Would I lose to Belmont? No, I wouldn't lose to Belmont.
Yeah,
no, I would not lose to Belmont.
So there you go. You'd be an upgrade.
Hey, the big question is this: could Belmont win the Pac-12?
There's nothing that says they can't.
There you go.
No,
all right.
So they can't. Good point.
I want to include one thing right now, and that's Indiana Butler from this last week. I think the big thing people are missing here, I know Tennessee hit the shot, but I really think this Indiana team can make a deep run because Juwan Morgan, to me, may be the most valuable or most important player on any team in this country. I mean, when he decides to put you on the back, this could be like Danny Manning in Kansas 1988 thing, Brian.
I wrote after the game, I think he's really, with that performance, put himself in the National Player of the Year conversation. I don't think he's at the forefront of it yet. But, I mean, what he did in that game, he did everything you could possibly want a player to do. And really kept them in the game in a position for Tennessee to hit that shot. So if he keeps playing like that, I don't see a way where Indiana doesn't finish with a good record. I don't know if they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think they're still a little bit behind Michigan State. But I don't think there's any reason, if he plays that way, why they won't finish third or fourth.
Steve, what's your take?
I don't know. I mixed emotions about Indiana. I mean, obviously it's my alma mater, so I mean, I love the program, and I love the fact that I think Indiana's got as much resiliency as any basketball team in the country right now, because they're winning all these games that in the last 10 years they would lose these games, and now they're winning them all of a sudden, and they're doing it routinely. But I just think that they're not as tough. They're not the level of like Michigan, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia even, and Tennessee. I'll even give you Tennessee. I don't think that they're on that quality of level yet of play. I think we're having fun with them. I think this was a weak Butler team, and it took a and you yourself said
Butler team.
They pissed away 22 of 23 seconds.
Yeah, but it's not the point. I think this. I don't know. Let's go with Brian. Brian, I don't think this is a weak Butler team. I think this is a Butler team that'll be in the top 3 in the Big East and make the tournament.
Well, being top 3 in the Big East may not be saying much this year.
I
with
know.
kind of the lack of top teams in that tournament. But I do think Butler is, I think, better than.
I get what you're saying, Mike.
But I don't think it's necessarily a win that's going to be one of those best wins on Indiana's tournament resume or anything like that.
Well, no, they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So. I mean, the Big Ten and the Big East have kind of traded places.
I think Indiana's a very fun team to watch right now. They're young. Everybody's in love with Romeo Langford. Tennessee now is becoming the new Michael Lewis, or that new kid that comes out of nowhere, and Joe Hillman type player. And he's better talent than any of them. I get that, but I still think Indiana still is a second tier team, and you've got them ranked at 19th. I think the AP's got them ranked 22nd. That's not where they belong. If I'm going to do a ranking, I'd say that's about where they fit in. I don't think that I can't rely on Juwan Morgan, because I've seen him in the early part of the season not play well. And if he goes, I think that team goes as he goes. And he had, 35, 36 points against Butler, right? Somewhere in that number.
Yeah,
and they won. But they needed every one of those points to be able to hit a three-pointer at the buzzer to win. So I think Indiana's right where they should be. I'm a little disappointed in Archie Miller, truthfully, defensively, because I think that the team is not as strong defensively. I think that's their weakness. And to me, Indiana's weakness is its defense. They don't play post defense very well at all. And that's going to bite them in the butt. Because Tennessee's a big, powerful team. Duke's a big, powerful team. We already proved we can't handle that. they've got issues, but they're fine. They're fun to watch.
So I think part of their defensive issues too come with being a young team and playing so many young players. I'll be curious to see, because Archie Miller, I have a ton of respect for, especially on that end of the court. I'll be curious.
Yeah, and I do too. Yeah, I'm not knocking Archie Miller in any way, shape, or form. No. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I was more of saying I'll be curious to see how they progress on that end of the court as the year goes on, because usually those young teams with a coach like him will get better as the year goes on, and so they may sure that up and be a much better defensive team later on in the year than they are now. But I mean, that is something to watch, because as you mentioned, that is the thing that thinks them.
You know, Brian, the thing we talk about though, the year goes on. They're 10 games into it now. We're a third of the year is gone. We're getting to halfway point real fast here after the holidays. And so teams should be gearing up right now. Pretty much all league play starts right about now. We have a few, every team, not UCLA, Indiana, Duke, Kentucky, they all start league play here real quickly. And if they're not ready to go now in league play, are they going to be ready? Or do you just look at somebody like Tom Izzo, who just says, I don't care about league play. My team's ready to go by the time we get to the Sweet 16. I mean, he's the master of that mentality. Coach K is the master of that mentality. But if you're not playing close to or at your peak right about now or starting to get there, you're probably behind the eight ball, right or wrong.
I think you're right to some extent. Just playing devil's advocate, the only thing you can maybe point to is that at this point, you've only played maybe two or three, a handful of really legitimate teams. A lot of them have been against kind of mid-majors and directional state schools where you don't necessarily have to play at a high level defensively. And so when you kind of get exploited against those better teams and you see more of your flaws, more to work on when you get into conference play. I think we'll know one way or the other how to feel about Indiana's defense come late January than I would right now.
Sure.
That's all your response. All right. Do you have any more questions before we
Mike,
start
you rip on me
for
talking too much. Now I say one word and you rip me for that too. Jesus
no,
Christ.
it was.
Can I ever please
I
you?
didn't rip you. I was
ever
just shocked.
Please you, Mike? Is there anything I can say or do?
Oh my God! Now you
shut
sound like
up
my
that
wife.
pleases you?
All right. So, do you have any more questions, or do you want to move on to the games of the week?
Let me see. Alford gone. Those are 5 of my questions right there.
All right.
Miller, defensive genius. We already talked about that. Let me see. Oh, I had one question for you guys real quick. Mike and Brian, both. Christmas trees, fake or real?
Fake.
I love a real one. Me and my wife got our first fake one this year, and I would much prefer a real one.
Are we talking about
a fake one?
Wait a second.
Okay,
Wait a second.
Go ahead,
Are
Mike.
we talking about boobs or Christmas trees?
Christmas trees.
About what?
Boobs or Christmas trees? It just sounded like we were talking about boobs.
Christmas trees.
Okay.
It's a family show.
I prefer fake Christmas tree. What?
All right, we have a fake one too.
It's less of a mess. But
yeah,
all right,
let's
talk. Let's talk about.
Go back to basketball.
The biggest games of this week. We've got Buffalo tonight, number 14 on the AP, at number 25, Syracuse. What do you think about this game, Brian? Because when I look at this, I just don't know if Syracuse shoots the ball well enough to beat a really good team.
And that's been their problem the past couple of years, is they don't have enough offense. I think Buffalo has the personnel and the ability to get into the middle of Syracuse's zone and beat it from the outside and then passing from the high post. I think they'll be able to score enough points there. My question is if they can match up with Tyus Battle on the perimeter and handle them there. If it's close at the end of the game, I think that's when we'll see kind of the carrier dome effect on both teams. And Tyus Battle is one of the best clutch players in the country. I think he's consistently shown that the past year and a half, hitting big shots. So if it's close on the stretch, I think that plays in Syracuse's favor. But I really think that this might be a game that Buffalo kind of controls for most of the game.
All right, and I think the big thing here that we got to look at, Steve, is we talked about the Big East, who usually gets at least 6 teams into the tournament. The Pac-12 is usually 5 or 6 teams. With them not getting that many bids now, I think you're going to see lower major teams like Buffalo, the Furmans of the world, that even if they don't win their conference tournament this year, I think we're going to see a lot more of these teams getting in now because of the weakness of a couple of the major conferences.
Yeah, and I like the Big East. I think the Big East is the bruiser. It's the new Big Ten, kind of, in my opinion. It's what the Big Ten was when I was playing. It's a very physical conference, and I think they beat each other up so much. So I tried to understand that about the Big East teams. They may not look pretty, but they're not a team you want to play in tournaments. There's no doubt about that. And the game is carried on, so I'm assuming it's a Syracuse home game, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't beat their coach, and you can't beat playing at home, Syracuse. I mean, I would expect Syracuse to
lost
win this
over the weekend at home, I think, didn't they, Brian?
Yeah, they lost to Old Dominion, but I think that plays.
Okay, well, yeah.
That makes it even harder, though, for Buffalo.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. All right.
We got an SEC-ACC matchup that I'm going to let you talk a little bit about, Brian. That's number 7 Auburn at North Carolina State.
Yes, I'll actually be at that game, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be both teams love to play fast. I think NC State averages just under 90 points a game, and Auburn's right around 85. So there's going to be a ton of points scored. Both teams press. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be a track meet. One thing that's interesting is that this is Auburn's it's their first true road game of the year, which is always tough, and you don't know how a team's going to respond in that kind of atmosphere. And for NC State, this is their first real chance to have make a statement win, really. They lost at Wisconsin earlier in the year, the game where Brad Davison drew 5 charges that were some questionable calls. But for the most part, NC State controlled that game until late when Wisconsin kind of took over and ended up separating themselves 1-4. And State's a team that I think is really looking for that respect. They were an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament last year, 8 or 9 seed in the NCAA tournament last year. Returned a good number of people from that team. Have some good newcomers as well. C.J. Bryce, who's transferred from UNC Wilmington, has made a big impact for them as well. I think they're simply going to come out and want it more. It's going to be an up-and-down track meet. It's going to be fun. It's going to be close. I think NC State will end up getting about a 5-point win, though, because they're playing at home and will have the added motivation of wanting to get that respect and a statement win, if you will.
All right. Now, that same night, the UCLA Bruins travel to Cincinnati to play the Cincinnati Bearcats. And I think this is where you're going to see things fall completely off the cliff, is this week with Alford, Steve, because they're going to Cincinnati, they're going to Ohio State, and I think they're going to lose both games.
Yeah, that's a good bet.
And they have more talent than Cincinnati. They should not lose to Cincinnati, I don't think.
No.
Coaching matters.
Yeah.
I will say, though, Cincinnati might be the perfect recipe for them because Cincinnati cannot score.
Oh, they never can score. I mean, it's been since the days of Bob Huggins. I think since, Nick Van Exel was there, I don't think they've had anybody that can shoot the ball. But they always play, and this is the question here, though. I think this, and me and Steve have had this, discussion before. Coaches take on the personality of teams take on the personality of their head coaches, and Mick Cronin is a tough, hard-nosed defensive coach. I can't see Steve Alford going to Cincinnati and beating a team like that.
I can't really either, but at the same time, they may only have to score 45.
Yeah, and
I think they're talented enough to score 45.
Oh, I think they are too. I'm just asking are they tough enough to keep Cincinnati from scoring 46?
Right. I mean, I don't think they're tough enough to keep Cincinnati from scoring 46, 50, however many that Cincinnati needs to score. My question is if Cincinnati is capable of scoring that many points.
Yeah, who knows? I think the most interesting game of this week is on Thursday night, where Texas Tech travels to Cameron Indoor Stadium to play Duke, Brian. And I think Texas Tech is a team that the schedule hasn't been overwhelmingly tough. They beat a couple of good teams, but this is an athletic team, and I'm just interested to see if they can hang with Duke or not.
Well, I think the game's at Madison Square Garden, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. Well,
which obviously plays in a Tech's favor. I mean, that's basically a home game for Duke and Madison Square Garden.
Actually, there'll be twice as many Duke fans there.
Exactly. So it's worse. But
yeah.
I mean, Texas Tech defensively, they're just as good as they've always been. Jarrett Culver stepped up and become a star this year. He's entered the Player of the Year conversation. I think he scored 30 points in their win over the weekend. It wasn't against a good team, but he's been playing really well this year. So he's somebody who can carry them offensively. And they've got a couple other players too, who have given them more on the offensive end than we're used to. I think we expected Texas Tech to get. Matt Mooney, who's a transfer from South Dakota, has stepped in nicely there, both from a shooting and playmaking role. So Texas Tech's going to be able to give Duke a really tough test. This game's going to come down to style of play for me, because Texas Tech wants to make it a half-court game. Duke has not shown they can execute offensively in a half-court game. They've been in games that ended up being blowouts, but were closer than they should have been for a lot of the game against teams like Army, teams like Yale, because they were able to force Duke to play a half-court game, and Duke struggled to do that. If Texas Tech can do that, Texas Tech is capable of beating Duke in a half-court game. The only question is if they can keep it to a half-court game, which I don't think that with Duke's athletes, they necessarily will be able to.
So, Steve, can Texas Tech win this game?
No.
Okay. Next up, I think Texas Tech can win this game. I think they're good enough to beat Duke. If they play 10 times, Duke's going to win 7 or 8 times, but Texas Tech can play with anybody.
I think the only team that beats Duke is Duke themselves. I think that because they're so young, they'll beat themselves. Yeah. I get that, but I think Duke's the only team that can beat themselves, really. If the Duke wants to play, that's why they're a Final Four team. They're going to be there in the end. Krzyzewski's too damn good of a coach and knows the game, and I don't think anybody can beat Duke other than Duke.
Well, Gonzaga beat Duke.
They outscored them. They didn't beat them.
Oh, okay. So can you get outscored and still win?
No. Yeah, they won the game, Mike. Yeah, we give you that, but I don't think they beat Duke. I think they just outscored Duke. You know, and if that game goes 5 seconds longer, that outcome of that game changes. So, but it didn't. So, yeah, it didn't. If it's the middle order of life, I get that. But I don't. If I'm going to bet my farm against Duke Gonzaga rematch,
you live in L.A. and Malibu. You don't have a farm, Steve. Maybe you have an ant farm.
We have that too. Yeah, and crickets.
So you're telling me if I had to bet the trailer, bet it on Duke, right?
That's what I would do, but Mike, I'm a unique kind of guy.
And you're usually wrong. Next up, Saturday we got a matchup of two of the.
Brian, who would you bet on? Brian, in a rematch, would you bet on Duke?
I would bet on Duke. I feel the same way in terms of Texas Tech being able to win a game or 2 out of 10.
Actually, I think this. I think Texas Tech would have a better chance to beat Duke right now than Gonzaga would.
Let me ask you guys this. Here's a good question. Is Texas Tech still living off the reputation of Bob Knight? I mean, are they getting overranked because of the Bob Knight era of Texas Tech or not? Or is that just me being egotistical again?
That's you being egotistical again.
Okay, fair enough.
They're
no
there.
problem.
They're there because Chris Beard is an excellent coach, and they've built on last year's Elite Eight finish and have, they lost Keenan Evans, who was their main guy, and then obviously Zaire Smith wasn't expected to leave, and he left in the lottery. But they've replaced those guys and have had other guys step up in ways that weren't expected of them.
So what you're saying, Brian, is they finally recovered from Pat Knight, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Next up, Steve, Colorado versus Indiana State in Honolulu.
Does anybody care?
Okay. Next up, Kentucky, North Carolina. Do we think Kentucky can hang in this game, Brian, or is Utah just that bad? Because when Kentucky played a good team this year, they got destroyed worse than Indiana did by Duke. And Seton Hall, I don't think, is a very good team, and they lose to Seton Hall. Is there any chance here that they can kick it in gear against North Carolina Saturday afternoon?
There is certainly a chance. This has kind of the makings of a game that, because of that Seton Hall loss, and this kind of has the makings of a get right game for them, where they feel like they need to make a statement, and they've had some time off, and Calipari may have had a chance to fix some things. The bad news for them is that UNC had that time, then had that game against Gonzaga, and so I think UNC fixed a lot of their issues and found something that worked against Gonzaga, playing more pressure defense, playing this year a little bit more. Luke May got going. He had been struggling this year shooting the ball. Kenny Williams got going. He had been struggling this year shooting the ball. Cam Johnson's been playing incredibly well. So I think UNC turned a corner in that Gonzaga game, and I think it's going to make for a really fun game. I think UNC will end up winning it, but it's going to be a game that can kind of go either way down the stretch.
All right, and then we've got late Saturday night, #1 Kansas at.
Wait, I don't get a comment on that game. You want me to comment on Colorado?
Go ahead.
Indiana State?
Yeah, but you wouldn't. You refuse
North
to.
Carolina,
It hurt my feelings. Go ahead, comment.
I honestly, and I'm going to say this with all conviction. I think John Calipari is probably one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball, because of the baggage he brings with him and the baggage Kentucky brings with it. Kentucky is always dangerous. They're always, and I think Calipari is actually a good basketball coach.
I agree.
You know, you're going to say cheats. Okay, I get that. And I think it's that baggage that drags him down. But I think as a basketball coach, I think he's efficient. He's good. He knows his limitations. I don't think this is a very talented year for Kentucky, which, you know, the recruiting balance thing comes out. I think that Duke spent more money on recruiting this year than Kentucky did.
And this is the guy that just said we couldn't say that Calipari cheats. Jeez.
So, but I would never bet against a Kentucky team in a big game. And I actually like John Calipari better than I like Roy Williams as a coach, truthfully.
Oh, me too.
I think John Calipari at least throws it out there and says, yeah, I am what I am. And that's what I am. And Roy Williams tries to make you believe he's something different. And for that reason, I like Kentucky.
Okay. So what were we talking about?
Right,
Kentucky, North Carolina. Do you think that North Carolina will beat Kentucky, or do you like Kentucky here then? I assume you like Kentucky?
Where's the game being played at?
It's at Kentucky, I believe.
I like Kentucky. This is a needed win for Kentucky, and Calipari finds ways to win those games. You know, he loses the games against Wisconsin when he's 32-0, getting ready to break Bob Knight's record. He trashes those games, but I think a game like this, which he needs, I think Kentucky needs this win, and I think it's going to be a little more valuable for them than it is for North Carolina, because you think North Carolina's a darling now since you jumped them up in your rankings.
They beat Gonzaga. I give them credit where credit is due.
Well, I think Gonzaga, we're finding out quickly that Gonzaga may be overrated.
Well, I think we're finding out that if you're a mid-major program or in a mid-major league, and if you play a bunch of really good teams, even if you beat like the #1 team in the country, if you lose at #6 and at #3, then guys that don't know anything will call you a program that's not very good or a team that's not very good, and I think that's unfair, Steve.
Okay.
I mean, come on. They're playing the best teams in the country.
Who are we talking about, Gonzaga?
Yeah, I mean, their schedule.
No, I think Gonzaga's a good basketball team. I think Mark Few, I still think Mark Few is the best college coach going right now in the game. I just think it's a little bit overrated of a basketball team. That's all. They're still relevant.
So you don't think they're a top 10 team?
No, I mean,
you don't think they're a top 10 team?
They're a top what team? How far?
You don't think they're a top 10 team?
They're right on that fringe.
Then how are they overrated?
I hate the rankings. Because the rankings don't mean anything.
Well, I'm just asking you, do you think they're a top 10 team? Is the only thing I said.
I think they are because of their coach.
Okay, then how are they overrated? It's not like anybody thinks they're number 1 or 2. They beat Duke,
Well, they had them at number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, wait
a
second. It's not they. Who's they? Because they should be a mouse too, because it was we also.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
I will say this about Gonzaga, and I brought it up a little last week, and I think it's worth mentioning again now. In Maui, they had an easy path, and the easiest path you could have in Maui to get to the finals. I think they played Illinois in the first round, and they struggled against Illinois before winning that game late. They played Arizona in the second game and struggled against an Arizona team that we now know is not very good. They had that performance against Duke, and I think everyone came enthralled with Gonzaga because of, one, how good Duke was prior to that, and two, how good that game was individually. And everything, and that was all worthwhile. Gonzaga is a very good team, and they played up to their potential in that game. But other than that game, they struggled in those 2 games leading up to it. After that, they struggled at Creighton and won. And, I mean, Creighton's a tough place to play. Creighton's a decent basketball team, so that's not, a negative for them, but it wasn't a overwhelming positive. Then they struggle at home against a Washington team that we know was not very good. And then they go away from home and play Tennessee, neutral site, another good team, but lost that game. And then they go play a UNC and lose by double digits. So we think Gonzaga, in terms of thinking them as an elite team, based off that one game against Duke. And they're certainly a good team and have played that, but their resume right now is pretty much only that Duke game.
Yeah, but that resume is more than most people's because there's only a handful of teams playing their best game can beat Duke, I think. And the other thing is this, with Mark Pugh as the coach, and the toughness of that schedule is why I would worry more about them at the end of the season. I don't think they're one of the top 5 teams in the country, but I think they're a team you could see in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Next up, number 1 Kansas travels to Arizona State to play the best team in the Pac-12. I'm not going to ask if Arizona State has a chance because we know they do. My question is this. Arizona State, with the way they play and the personnel they have, do they match up with Kansas?
I will say yes, because what Kansas has going for them right now is Legero Vic making threes and Dedrick Lawson doing everything Dedrick Lawson does. Outside of that, their guards have been extremely inconsistent. Quentin Grimes has fallen off a cliff since the Michigan State game. He's been a real non-factor. Without Azubuike, no one else has really stepped up. So it's become the Lawson and Vic show. And Lawson's main advantage over teams is the fact that he's 6'10", he can handle the ball and is athletic and doesn't play like a true big man at 6'10". Arizona State has a bunch of guys who are in that same kind of mold. So I don't think he's going to have that overwhelming athletic advantage over other teams, which is going to make it, I think, an interesting game. Kansas is a better team than Arizona State, but I think Arizona State right now is deeper and has the kind of athleticism and length that's going to give Kansas some problems.
All right, Steve, you got any other basketball questions?
Any other basketball questions?
Unless you have some more.
Are we done talking about games? Are we done talking about games?
Yeah, unless you want to talk about some more games.
No, I just because I do have a question, Brian. And I don't know, and I don't want to put you on a spot if you just don't understand it. I get it. Can you? And I'm seriously, I'm not trying to be hard right now. It's just like, do you understand this new ranking system that they're using to rate teams and the Ken poll or whatever it's called?
No,
do you get that? Can you explain that to everybody?
Right? I don't think nobody can explain it.
But that's the ranking system they're using now to determine the top 67 and 68 teams. Is that correct or not?
Yeah.
What's the premise of this? Do you have a 10,000-foot level view of this premise or this concept? Or I don't get it. I don't understand. Why it's better than Sargent, why it's better than RPI, why it's better than AP. What are they factoring in that we're missing?
It's really not. And that's kind of the problem. It would take a 2.5-hour lecture to kind of explain and go through everything that's in. But basically what they're trying to do is basically make one metric that combines 5 different metrics to come up with the best metric. And in the end, it is kind of some of the stuff looks right, and a lot of the rankings have looked really convoluted to this point. And I don't think it's anything that breaks the in-state tournament, but they're trying to combine efficiency with like strength of record and how bad you beat a team, but they're only capping it at 10 points, so every win by 10 points or more counts the same, which is very confusing and I think is designed to stop teams from running up the score, but it values all wins the same basically, and that's not the way it should be. There's a lot of flaws in this as well. I think the idea behind it was smart to try and come up with a more accurate ranking system, of which the RPI had kind of gone away from doing, but I don't think this is a system that's done that.
But is the question here is this a NCAA ranking system? I mean, did they devise this?
They did. Yeah, the NCAA is basically
okay.
New.
So it's a manipulation basically to make sure they get the money teams
yeah.
into the tournament. It's what you're saying. It's basically probably what it really is boiling down to behind the closed doors on Washington Street in Indianapolis. As they sit there with Emmert and his group, they're saying we now can devise our own ranking system to make sure that the teams that can bring money into the tournament, that'll draw advertising, draw everything, we now can manipulate them into the tournament how we want to. Is that really what it's boiling down to?
The conspiracy theorist in me says yes, but they release these rankings every week, so we'll at least have some kind of up-to-dateness and some transparency in the process.
All right. So
okay.
We're done with the basketball questions. I have a question. Do you watch college football, Brian?
I do. I went to South Carolina, big SEC school, so big football fan.
All right. So today,
there's a Lou Holtz guy for you, Mike.
Today,
you don't hate him. He's Lou Holtz guy.
Lou Holtz is a cheating little leprechaun, anyways.
But see, there you go. I got him started now, Brian. Let's go at him, Brian. I love.
Has there been any place he's went where he wasn't put on probation afterwards?
It doesn't matter. Is there any place he's went he hadn't won?
Well, yeah, but it's easy to win when you get to do what you want. But my question is something that's relevant to today instead of not being relevant, which is Lou Holtz. Bryce Love, who dominated the Pac-12 in 2017, rushing for 2,118 yards, 19 touchdowns, en route to a second-place Heisman Trophy finish, had a senior season, 739 yards, has announced today that he will not be playing in the Sun Bowl to get ready for the NFL Draft. So, I already know what Steve thinks about this. What do you think about that? Do you think it's all right, or do you think it's a bad thing?
I think it's all right. I personally don't understand the point of bowl games.
Exactly.
I think they're the stupidest postseason format you could possibly come up with.
Yeah, and Stanford is 8-4, and in the Sun Bowl, which they will play at 2:00 on New Year's Eve, they will face 7-6 Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like there's no reason for a guy to risk injury in a game that essentially doesn't mean anything. Like these bowl games are essentially glorified exhibitions that are put on TV.
Steve, do you agree? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I see your point, Mike, and I understand your point, and I understand Brian's point. From that perspective, I do. I just say that you're talking about one player who has potential to be a top 10 or lottery pick in the NFL draft, if there is such a thing. I know the lottery is more associated with the NBA.
Well,
but
I'll tell you, his problem is this.
The bowl game is their final hurrah. They go there, and they aren't that player, and they go dress up one more time. They know it's their last time, and they get a little gift. They go somewhere different. They get to travel a little bit, and one more time with the team, on the team plane. So for that perspective, the exhibitionism of the bowl games has value. But to this kid who is risking an NFL career, sure, I can't disagree with that, Mike.
And this is the great thing. He's probably got a backup there who now will get to play in the Sun Bowl.
Right. Yeah. So one man's trash, another man's treasure. So, yeah. So I understand entirely what you're saying. and I agree with you. I rethunk it.
This is taking
And
a year
really
to get him to agree with me on this, by the way.
That's okay.
I'm
You
glad-
know what? I'm adaptable. Unlike you, I'm adaptable to change. You know,
Yeah, but see,
I'm
I don't
willing
have
say,
to
yeah,
be.
you're
This
right.
is the difference. You don't have to be adaptable to change if you're always right. Brian, any final words?
No, just looking forward to finally some actual good games this week as opposed to last week's schedule. So
Yeah,
that's,
and
it's a positive.
me and Steve will get to talk about Indiana against Central Arkansas and Indiana against Jacksonville State or Jacksonville or whatever. Steve, any final words?
I got a question, Brian. Are you coming back next week?
Of course.
Because
You
this
gotta
show
take
would be
your-
worthless without you. And
You gotta
I
take
mean,
your
well,
bad.
we could lose Mike, but you know, if you and I just did the show, it probably would be a little bit better.
We all can do that next week if you want and compare the numbers, Steve, because you got a national championship ring. Well, I think we've done that experiment with the IU show before. How'd that work out for you without me on the numbers compared to when you had me?
Hey, I got a question for you guys.
That's what I
Just
thought.
for the fun of it, and it means it's worthless. Final fours. Brian, Mike?
How can you
What do you
pick a
think?
Final Four when you don't even know who's in what bracket?
Because it's worthless. Because everybody else is doing it. Why can't we? Why can't
All
we
right.
just say
Steve,
right now?
Steve. What's your Final Four?
My Final Four?
Yeah, we'll make you go first. Since it was
Virginia. Virginia. Well, I got to pull this up. Hang on.
He's got to see what everybody else picked before he does it.
No. I have to get back to the rankings. I got Virginia, Duke, Michigan, and Gonzaga.
Okay, Brian.
Before this
Right
season,
now. This is right now. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's worthless.
Yep. Before the season, I had Duke, UNC, Kentucky, and Nevada. I still feel confident in Duke, obviously. I'm a little shaky with Nevada, but I'm going to go with that because I think they could go into the tournament undefeated and be a 1 seed, which would give them a pretty easy track out west. So I would put Nevada in there as well. I'm going to keep UNC in there because I think they're the most complete team in the country when they're clicking on all cylinders.
They'll lose on
then-
coaching. They'll lose on coaching.
Maybe, but they won a title a couple years ago. I think a lot of it depends on their path. So that's Duke, UNC, Nevada. And then the other team, I think a lot of it will depend on the bracket. But if you had to put a gun to my head right now, I would probably go with Kansas. And I hate saying that. Or no, I'll go with Michigan. Not Kansas, Michigan. Michigan, Duke,
Beeline's
Nevada.
figured out how to win in the tournaments. Mike, what do you?
What am I? I'm 6 foot, about 230 pounds. Let's see. I'll go Duke just because it's always a safe pick. It's kind of like pick the Patriots to win the Super Bowl at the start of the year. You know you're going to at least get
I know.
close.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah.
Even though I did pick at the start of the year, the Chargers and the Saints, and that looks brilliant right now.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Oh.
I would say Duke. I'd like to pick Kyle Guy since he's the leading all-time scorer at Lawrence Central High School, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say Duke. Duke, Michigan State. They got Tom Izzo. Same preference. He'll get close.
Same
Duke,
preference, yeah.
Duke, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Indiana.
Whoa.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
What?
I tell you what, I think right now the sleeper team in college basketball right now is Virginia. I think those guys are, after what happened to them last year, I think they're hanging just under the radar screen enough that, staying at 5, 6. I mean, they're 9-0. I think it's a very good basketball team, very well coached team. And I know I make fun of Kyle Guy, but he's a good basketball player, and that's a good franchise, a good program. I think they're just kind of lurking there and just kind of staying off everybody's vision, parameter. And I think they're going to make big noise come the right time of the year. That's kind of my
I
feeling
think
about
this
Virginia.
also,
I like them.
Steve, losing like that to a 16 seed could also be a negative. That means they come out this year in the first or second round, and a team's giving them a game, that's going to make that pressure even more on them than what it was before, I think.
I think their coach is too strong and their talent's too good for that to happen to them again. I think that was a fluke. And
but I still think this. Yeah. When you look at the coach's track record through the years, the way he plays is conducive to games being close. And when you keep them close in a tournament, as they saw last year, anything can happen.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Now, I do think, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I do think offensively they are a better team this year.
Yeah, they're playing at a little bit faster pace, not much, but a little bit faster pace. DeAndre Hunter's had a lot to do with that. He was hurt in the NCAA tournament, so he didn't play in that game, and he would have been a factor, at least defensively. He's one of the best defensive players in the country, but this year he's taken the next step forward offensively and given them the kind of athletic 6'7" wing who can drive, post up, shoot three that they never really had before. So I think he individually gives them an added dimension that gives them a better chance to make a Final Four type run in the tournament than they've have had in years past.
All right, Steve, anything else you want to throw in?
No, how about the Colts? Can we talk about the Colts and the Cowboys just one more time because I didn't get enough of it yesterday?
This is a college basketball show. Nobody cares about the Colts and the Cowboys. Brian, do you care about the Colts and the Cowboys?
Didn't the Colts win by didn't they shut them out? Wasn't that?
Yeah. See, he's not even sure.
First time since 2003 the Cowboys have been shut out. Period.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. There you go.
Neither team's going to matter in a couple of weeks. So it's
Thank you.
No, I agree with you there. Neither team's going to matter in a couple of weeks. I get that, but us mortals, not like you, Brian, who's an ACC genius. We live for our 15 minutes of fame. So
Oh hell! All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up for today, so Steve can get back to his surfboard and these dogs on Malibu Beach. We want to thank Brian Rauf for coming on. Remember, you can find Brian on what?
I have a comment. Can I make a comment?
I was going to plug Brian, but yeah, go ahead and make a comment.
I'm staring at a picture right now of some drab olive green couch with a beautiful yellow lab, some black dog, and a black and white dog laying all with their heads up somebody else's butts. And those got to be your dogs, and they are beautiful dogs.
Yeah, and that was, what do you mean drab? It was like middle of the night. And did you see where my lab had spilled his Sprite? I got a lab that runs through the house looking for cans, and if he finds a can and there's anything in it, he'll take his tooth, pop a hole in the side, flip it over, and try to lick it off the ground real quick.
We take the Sprite away from our dogs at 9 o'clock at night, so that doesn't happen.
Well, Sprite's zero, so there's nothing bad in it. And the thing is this, my wife always tells me if you'd ever give them water, they wouldn't do that. But I don't think that's true.
Nope.
No. And then I get a shower, and all of a sudden the dog's in the shower with me drinking the water off the bottom of the thing. I don't think it's because I don't give him enough water. All right, we're going to wrap the show up. Remember, you can find Brian Rauf, Busting Brackets, at Fansided. What was your Twitter handle again, Brian?
It is BRauf33, BRAUF 33.
33?
Or bustingbrackets.com. 33.
Remember that? The greatest basketball player of all time wore number 33. And it wasn't Steve Risley. It was Larry Bird. All right, guys. We're going to wrap it up. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Brian Rauf, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.